Imagine being a theater goer in the year of 1946, watching the trailer for She-Wolf of London, seeing the poster with its frightening imagery, and a title promising a monster movie. And it's brandished with the Universal Pictures logo, the home of Dracula, Frankenstein and the Bride, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Wolfman. You believe so strongly in your heart that it's going to be great. You settle into your seat with your popcorn, Coca-Cola, and the cigarettes you got from the cigarette machine, ready for a werewolf transformation and supernatural thrills. But the twist is, the monster never shows up. You're left wondering instead, what the fuck is this? Instead, the marketed creature feature, spoiler alert, delivers a domestic murder mystery with a purely human explanation. Understandingly, people were upset. Why would Universal Studios release a film that sold a monster but delivered a murder mystery? What's with the gaslighting here? What's with this bait and switch? The answer is that this film is a low-budget, creatively exhausted relic that marks the final gasp of Universal's classic Gothic monster cycle. Its failure to deliver a physical monster is a reflection of a profound shift occurring across the entire film industry in the 1940s. A shift from overt physical horror of the past to the more unsettling internal dread that was taking its place. We're going to dive into why this shift happened, how She-Wolf of London became the perfect accidental example of that shift, and how the entire horror genre evolved. From RKO Pictures' Cat People being the first true innovator of this psychological horror, right up to the emergence of the nuclear age monsters like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm Adriana Oyster, writer and Universal Monsters and B-movie enthusiast, and thank you for visiting my channel. Now let's sink our teeth into this. She-Wolf of London was released in the United States on May 17, 1946. It was double-billed with another film from Universal called The Cat Creeps. For its United Kingdom release, the title was changed to The Curse of the Allambys, which honestly is a better title for this film, but it wouldn't have filled those seats in the US. The name She-Wolf of London is most likely a nod to Universal's first feature-length werewolf film, 1935's Werewolf of London. A lot of people believe Lon Chaney Jr. was the first Universal werewolf, but that badge of honor actually belongs to Henry Hull. Now, if we're gonna get real specific, Universal's first werewolf film was actually a short film called The Werewolf, which was released in 1913. Ironically, that film actually did feature a female werewolf and was written by a woman. Unfortunately, that film is also lost, as unknown copies were destroyed in the Universal Studios fire of 1924. I was originally inspired to make this video breaking down She-Wolf of London because I googled what was the lowest rated Universal Monsters film, according to IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and She-Wolf of London was the lowest of the classic era. If we include the modern era, the lowest are 2008's The Mummy: Tomb of the Dragon Empire, which I don't even think I've seen, and then the 2017 Tom Cruise The Mummy. Also, my favorite of the original monsters is the Wolfman, so the possibility of a she-wolf intrigued me. Keyword, possibility. To the film we go! I'll talk about some of the members of the cast in a few minutes when we really get into the movie. She-Wolf of London. I'll never get over Universal opening title sequences. We see Big Ben and a title card saying the story takes place in London, but really that and the strong accents of Scotland Yard are the only hints we're going to get that this story doesn't take place in the United States. I believe the actors forgot that they needed to act like they weren't in a California movie studio backlot. In fact, the title card is one of the few times there's even a mention of this Allenby curse. I'm pretty sure it was even forgotten during this movie. Anyway, Detective Latham informs Inspector Pierce that a man was attacked at the park the night before, and he says the perpetrator is said to be both a woman and a werewolf. The inspector doesn't believe in werewolves and judges it's just the work of a dog or a wolf. They both head to the park to inspect the crime scene. Also at the park, we meet Phyllis Allenby and her fiancé, rich lawyer Barry Landfield, and they're out flirting on horses.
We seem to have interrupted a romantic moment.
Their wedding date is in a week, but Phyllis is troubled by all this talk about dastardly dogs attacking people at the park. In fact, dogs seem to act strangely when they're around her. That outfit is hot. We then transition to the outside of what's called the Allenby London house, and when I first saw the exterior, for whatever reason, my mind immediately jumped to the Beverly Hillbillies, but I knew that didn't make sense because it's different production companies here. This has been a film-raised presentation, darling, if you get my reference. I think Ellie Mae says it more like, this has been a film-raised presentation. Anyway, actually it was used for exterior shots on one of my favorite shows ever, The Munsters. The Munsters were the first show that I'm pretty sure I was exposed to as a child, and immediately as soon as I saw her on the screen, I was enchanted by Lily Munster, and that obsession has just stayed with me through my entire life. As a reminder, Lily Munster is glamorously played by Yvonne DiCarlo. Really, this is probably one of the first signs in my life that I was gay. The house is a frequently reused Universal set piece in their backlot that was also seen in films like 1942's Night Monster, 1944's The Invisible Man's Revenge, Cat Creeps that this film was released alongside with, and 1966's The Ghost of Mr. Chicken. A young woman, Carol Winthrop, tries to get to housekeeper Hannah to deliver a message to her lover, but it's quickly intercepted by her mother, Martha, who might as well, from the moment we meet her, be wearing a huge sign that screams villain. Martha doesn't want Carol to be seeing this man because he's a starving artist and he's poor. He's beneath her. She takes this opportunity to reveal to Carol that her life is a total lie. They have been operating in this facade of Phyllis Allenby and Carol being cousins, with Martha being Phyllis's aunt and all of them living in the mansion. Martha was engaged to Phyllis's father, but dumped him for a poor man. She is actually just the housekeeper herself, and Phyllis is the rightful owner of the house. Carol seems to take this all rather well. Meanwhile, we're 12 minutes into this film and I'm already confused. To sum this up, Martha was engaged to Phyllis's father, Mr. Allenby, but dumped him for a poor man who ended up being Carol's father. Carol's father died, and out of sympathy, Mr. Allenby must have hired Martha as a housekeeper so they'd have some money. I wonder if Mrs. Allenby knew the backstory and was okay with this plan. Then Mr. and Mrs. Allenby died. Carol and Phyllis were very young, so I guess Martha took this opportunity to be like, I'm not the housekeeper, I'm your aunt. We're all just one big happy family here. That night, Phyllis admits she's on edge because of the dogs barking out her window and the events at the park. Martha goes to get her a drink of warm milk to soothe her. Coincidentally, Martha catches Carol downstairs trying to escape the house to meet her man, whose name is Dwight Severn. Hannah is watching all of these sketchy people. That also must be one hell of a drink, because from the time Martha goes up the stairs and delivers the milk to Phyllis, it goes from being half full to a full glass. Afterwards, Scotland Yard is at the park and hear a child being murdered and offer a rather slow reaction to the screaming.
They do say the howling of a dog means death.
Well, in that case, half of London must be at death's door at this minute.
That's no dog.
Sounds like a child here. Come on.
I'm not sure why a small child is out by themselves at the park, but okay. Then we see a robed, unidentified woman going back into the house, the cute little German Shepherd following them to the door. Before we go further with the story, there's some cool casting facts I thought I'd share. Our alleged she-wolf, Phyllis Allenby, is played by June Lockhart. Lockhart's career spanned nearly 90 years, as she debuted as a child actress and worked until she sadly passed away in October of 2025 at 100 years old. One of the last surviving actors from the golden age of Hollywood. Someone please protect Claire Bloom. Please tell me she's okay. We cannot lose Theodora. She-Wolf of London is considered her first leading film role. Before this, she had appeared in supporting roles in major films like 1942's Sergeant York and 1944's Meet Me in St. Louis. She's mostly known for her TV roles, becoming a household name by playing Ruth Martin in the show Lassie from 1958 to 1964, and as Dr. Maureen Robinson in Lost in Space from 1965 to 1968. Our alleged Aunt Martha is played by Sarah Hayden. She appeared in nearly 100 films during her career, including the 1940 version of The Shop Around the Corner. But she's most famous for playing Aunt Millie Forrest in 14 of MGM's Andy Hardy films starring Mickey Rooney. Interestingly enough, there are two casting connections between other Universal Monsters films and She-Wolf of London. Forrester Harvey, who played in 1941's The Wolfman, was set to star in She-Wolf as Detective Latham, but he died just days after filming started, so the role went to Lord Corrigan. Also, legendary Universal horror actress Una O'Connor, famous for The Invisible Man and Bride of Frankenstein, was the original choice for the role of Hannah, but she was dropped in favor of Ely Mayen. I hope I pronounced that right, I'm sorry if I didn't. Sometimes I'm not great at pronouncing things. Back to the film programming. In the morning, Phyllis wakes up alarmed because she says that there is blood on her hands. However, clearly there isn't, and we don't even get a close-up of her hands. Also, she just pushed her hair back with her hand, so if it were bloody, it would be in her hair. Maybe she's thinking that there's metaphorical blood on her hands, I don't know. This is the close-up we needed. No close-up. Couldn't they have bothered to at least dip her hands in Hershey syrup? Her robe and slippers are also muddy. Phyllis having touched the mud on the bottom and then again wiping it through her hair. I can already tell this woman that she's not turning into a werewolf because if she was, she wouldn't need slippers and she wouldn't need a robe. 19 minutes into this movie, and we get the second reference to the Allenby curse. Phyllis thinks that it's in play because she dreamed she was hunting to kill someone, and because of the found alleged evidence. Martha advises her to come to breakfast and act as nothing is wrong, because surely she doesn't want to upset Carol. Hannah questions if Phyllis is well. Martha tells her to shut up and do her job, then tells Phyllis to shut up when Carol comes to the table. Carol reads from the paper that a small boy was killed in the park the night prior and torn to pieces by a wild animal. To me in this scene, Lockhart seems almost to resemble a young Angela Lansbury. I'm thinking it's because of the softness of her face and her wide eyes, and her hairstyle. Phyllis ends up panicking as, once again, Carol can't read the damn room, but she can surely keep reading about how brutal that murder was.
The body of the child was horribly mangled. Oh, Carol, please!
So her and Martha help her back to bed. Hannah being like, what the fuck is up in this house? Barry comes to visit Phyllis, but she claims she doesn't ever want to see him again, restating this when days later Barry sneaks into the garden to see her. I also really like the relationship, brief in this film, between Barry and Hannah. I just think it's kind of fun.
Mrs. Winthrop is peculiar, if you ask me. Only don't tell her I said so.
I won't if you'll let me go through here to the garden.
Go ahead. What's holding you? Only if you get caught, I'll swear I never set eyes on you.
And I'll confirm it.
Martha gaslights him, and he ends up taking Carol for a carriage ride to talk to her about Phyllis. Later on that night, Latham visits the Allenbys, questioning them about the dogs since they do live so close to the park where these murders are occurring. Hannah claims they're vicious and begs to have them taken away, but Martha interrupts, going along with how there's no men in the house, so the dogs are for protection. Latham pretty much gives away to her that he's looking for a person who's a werewolf. A little later, Phyllis is unable to sleep, so she's stuffing her ears with cotton balls and, I don't know, trying to measure the hair on her face. She may be turning into Lassie after all.
Here, Lassie. Oh, I'm so happy to see you.
I had to get that joke in. Carol visits her in her bedroom because she wants to ask her some questions.
Did you ever notice what nice, broad shoulders I have?
I read online that in this scene, you're supposed to be able to see a boom mic along the top of the screen when they go to sit down, but apparently it's cut off in my version from the Blu-ray Universal Monsters Legacy 30 film collection, but you're supposed to be able to see it in the original theatrical release ratio. I searched, man. I searched for that boom mic, and I was actually pretty disappointed when I found out that it was not in my version. Carol lets Phyllis know that if something's bothering her, she can talk to her or Barry about it. Right when she leaves, Martha comes with some more drink, this time coffee, because Phyllis wants to fight this curse that we don't know anything about. Latham and other Scotland Yard detectives are spread out, patrolling the park. The constable not at all impressed with Latham's werewolf theory. Meanwhile, the unidentified woman has left the Allenby house again, and the dogs jump over the fence and follow her. She stalks Latham and murders him. Right there, everyone, was the only blood in the budget, and probably allowed by the Hays Code. Scotland Yard also sure takes a while to involve themselves in the attack. In the morning, Martha helps herself into Phyllis's bedroom and wakes her up. They find the door unlocked, a dirty garden cultivator at the side of her bed, her new dress is torn and muddy, her shoes once again muddy as well. They're really convinced now that she's a werewolf. No. None of these things point to being a werewolf. The robe, maybe. But if you're a werewolf and have sharp teeth and claws, why in the hell would you need a garden cultivator? Do you think Larry needed one? Do you think Larry needed slippers? Larry didn't need any of this bullshit. Carol comes in. That's also hot. Barry wants to go riding with them both, but Phyllis declines again. In Carol style, she announces a Scotland Yard man was brutally murdered by an animalistic madwoman, then lets herself out.
By the way, have you heard the news?
What news?
A Scotland Yard man was murdered in the park last night by a madwoman who made a noise like an animal. The morning paper is full of it.
Phyllis is convinced she is committing the murders and wants to consult a doctor. Martha telling her that if she does so, she'll be committed into asylum. And, you know, she does more gaslighting. While on the horses, Barry and Carol watch Scotland Yard investigate the latest crime scene at the park. Barry vents that he wants to talk to Phyllis, but Martha won't let him. Carol encourages him to see her anyway.
You know, if I could only talk to Phyllis, I'm sure that I could get her to tell me what's wrong.
Then why don't you?
How can I? Your mother insists she's too ill to see me.
Haven't you ever overruled a woman?
Barry visits the house again, Martha so happy thinking he's going to pick up Carol again, but he tells her, "I'm taking my future wife for a ride, bitch, you can't gaslight me." Barry and Phyllis are out for that ride in the carriage. He tries to get her to open up, but she says it's for his own good that they don't get married. I'm assuming at this point that the wedding date's been postponed, but that's never actually stated. 42 minutes, over halfway into the film, and this is the most we get about this alleged Allenby curse. Barry seems to insinuate that the family is cursed to the wolves, and Phyllis claims that since her parents were killed, she had strange pagan dreams. She's also been researching werewolves, and I appreciate Barry reciting Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice, Act 4, Scene 1, to be specific. I bet you didn't think I knew that, but I did.
Perish spirit, governed by a wolf, who, hanged for human slaughter, even from the gallows did his fell soul fleet, and whilst thou lay'st in thy unhallowed dam, infused itself in thee. For thy desires are wolfish, bloody, starved, and ravenous.
Barry, stop it!
That night, things are getting dire, so Inspector Pierce takes control of the case and instructs Scotland Yard to stop anyone they see at the park and to shoot them if they avoid questioning. At the same time, a woman leaves the Allenby house again, except this time no dogs follow her, and I guess that's supposed to be important. Theoretically, in a mystery, that should be important. And she is also being followed by Barry. We can kind of see her face, but not really. It's definitely more exposed, though. We should bring back using canes and walking sticks even without a disability. Barry is stopped by the constable, but they're easy on him when they find out he's a Nepo baby lawyer. We then see a man sitting on a park bench being stalked and then attacked by the woman. The Scotland Yard is still not reacting as fast as they could to animal sounds and screaming, but we are making progress.
What's that?
They get there in time to save the man's life, and he turns out to be Dwight, who was waiting for Carol, as Carol left the house to meet with him. Later, Barry interrogates Carol, believing her to be the she-wolf. He knows that she was the woman that he saw leaving the house, but obviously if she was the murderer, the dogs would have followed her like they did prior. Martha overhears Carol admit that she's been leaving the house 3 times a week to see Dwight at the park, while the serial killer's out. Martha interrupts, gaslights Barry again, and he leaves. Martha scolds Carol. Carol says she doesn't want to be with Barry despite what she wants. Martha claims that Barry will never marry Phyllis because she is insane. That night, Phyllis is reading what I'm usually reading. Convinced that she is a werewolf, she collects a bundle from her closet and goes to meet Carol in her room wanting to talk to her. Afterwards, Carol comes down and tells Martha that she is going to the police to tell them that Phyllis is the she-wolf, saying that she has told her everything and showed her all the evidence. What evidence? There is no evidence! Did she really just bundle up her muddy clothes and shoes and say, "See, I'm a werewolf"? And of course, Carol was like, "Oh well, yeah, okay, I'm convinced." But I gotta give it up to Carol, because instead, Carol tells Martha that she doesn't believe Phyllis is insane, rather a victim of a hoax. Hannah eavesdropping once again on all of this. Martha gaslights Carol and she goes to the police anyway, at Phyllis's request. Barry follows her again, and Dwight follows them both. After this, we get some cool off-kilter cinematography. Martha goes up the steps to deliver a glass of milk to Phyllis, reminding me of Cary Grant delivering the milk in 1941's Suspicion. Hannah watching and following her. Phyllis is worried about the police, and Martha keeps over and over and over again encouraging her to finish her milk.
How do you feel? Answer me, how do you feel?
I feel terribly sleepy. As if I'd been drugged.
You're right. I drugged you.
So I wouldn't hear the dogs?
No, Phyllis. I'm going to kill you.
Damn, that came out of nowhere. Martha randomly confesses that she wanted Phyllis to appear insane to get her out of the way so she and Carol could stay in the house and Barry could instead marry Carol. She knew that Phyllis believed in the Allenby curse, probably really drilled into her head from a young age, so she killed those people in the park and made Phyllis believe it was her, in the process drugging her at night through her drink. But because the police are soon to be involved and they'll find that she's not insane, she has to kill her and make it look like a suicide. And she whips out a knife. Hannah leans on the door too hard and makes her presence known to Martha, informing her that she knows her plan and that she's going to the police. What follows is up there on some of the more questionable things I've seen in film. Don't you just love when the trash takes itself out? Like I said before, production must not have had enough in the fake blood budget. And how convenient that the inspector arrives right on time! Production was also like, okay, we're almost at the 61-minute mark, how can we wrap things up? A blatant confession, older women chasing each other, and the killer falls down the stairs and stabs herself with no blood. Satisfies the Hays Code. Perfect. Barry runs to Phyllis and lets her know that everything is going to be okay now, because the she-wolf is dead. The end. So, I got questions. Let's start with Martha's motive. She believes that when Phyllis and Barry are married, they will discover the truth about their situation and kick her and Carol out of the house. But Phyllis grew up with Martha as her aunt, and Carol almost as a sister from a young age. Yes, the truth will always make itself known in due time, whether you like it or not. And yes, Martha is not a kind person, but Phyllis clearly has a bond with them, whether it's blood or not, and it's hard for me to believe she would kick them out, especially Carol. Even Barry has a friendship with Carol. Who knows, Phyllis may have decided to live with Barry in a different location and leave those two at the Allenby house. People really need to learn to communicate to each other instead of automatically assuming things. It leads to murder. All the energy that was wasted. It makes me want to take a nap. She also says that because the police are going to be involved and they'll call a doctor who will find that she's not insane, she has to kill her. But this doesn't make sense if she was trying to get her out of the way by making her insane. I assumed Martha wanted her to be committed, but maybe she just thought that she could make Phyllis bedridden for life, believing she was insane. That's the only way this really makes sense. And what role did the dogs even play in this, other than barking and being cute? We see that they follow the real murderer when Martha, enters and exits the house, but it doesn't seem like they're used in the actual murders. And if this is purely a conceived human plot, then how do you explain why the dogs all bark and act frantic around Phyllis? Do dogs just hate her for the hell of it? Dogs can definitely sense bad people, but Phyllis doesn't come off as a bad person. It's Martha who does. Did Martha bathe the woman in steak juice while she was being drugged? That's not explained. None of this is explained. Really, we're just told that Martha went to the park at night and killed people and a child with her teeth and fingernails, occasionally using a garden cultivator, and I guess possibly with a concealed knife, while making animalistic noises. She definitely has bloody clothes somewhere. The one thing she had going for her is how the alleged Allenby curse is really open to interpretation. Even though the Allenby curse is used as a catalyst for the plot, never in the narrative is it explained what the curse actually is. And really, this is only one of many plot holes throughout this film. When Tony Award-winning, Emmy-nominated, Hollywood Walk of Fame star June Lockhart was asked about her performance in this film, she was very self-critical. But you know, it's good to be self-aware. Truly, I believe she brought a softness to her role. She made use of what was given to her, which was really next to nothing. All the actors suffered from that. Most of them feel flat. But I'll tell you what, the star of the film to me was definitely Sarah Hayden. Her line delivery, the way her eyes move, her posture, her lip curls. She took the role of villain and ran with it. When it comes to the gaslighting, there's not even substance to this film to have a conversation. I could say that Phyllis wanting to see a doctor and Martha telling her she'll only be taken to an asylum is reminiscent of conversations that happen even present day about mental health. I've been gaslit like that. But this film is so bare and lacking any thematical depth that there's really nothing to be said. What's your opinion about She-Wolf of London, Razor? What do you think? Yeah, that's what I thought. Before I get into the production of the film, I wanted to give some recommendations in case you're like me and love werewolves and were bummed about the lack thereof. We are in a major literary crisis, so I'd like to recommend 2 books for you, both featuring female werewolves. Rachel Harrison's Such Sharp Teeth and How, a Werewolf Anthology from Women in Horror. I also just so happen to have a short story involving a she-wolf called A Man's Guide to Your Girlfriend's Cycle, available to read or listen to on my Queer Goal podcast anthology, link down below. In film, I recommend the 2000 film Ginger Snaps, and if you have not watched it, please watch 1981's An American Werewolf in London. It features one of the best werewolf transformations, and Rick Baker's work in the film won the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup. I haven't watched it, but I have heard there is a 1990 TV series called She-Wolf of London that does feature actual supernatural elements and a female werewolf. If you've watched it, please let me know in the comments. To understand the vibe of the set, you have to look at the man in the chair. The film was directed by Gene Yarbrough, a director known for directing multiple low-budget movies every single year and was a staple of the B-movie circuit. He directed films such as 1940's The Devil Bat with Bela Lugosi, 1941's King of the Zombies, and 1946's House of Horrors. He also found success directing Abbott and Costello films, although he wasn't involved in any of the Universal Monsters crossover films. Joining him was screenwriter George Bricker. Bricker contributed to several key films during Universal's transition into low-budget horror in the mid-1940s. His work includes 1945's House of Dracula, 1945's Pillow of Death, and 1946's The Brute Man. While working at Universal, he would shift from writing supernatural horrors toward human psychological thrillers, as seen in his scripts for She-Wolf of London and Pillow of Death. This was not his first time collaborating with the director Gene Yarbrough. She-Wolf was actually the third. They both also worked together on 1940's The Devil Bat and 1946's House of Horrors. The production of She-Wolf of London was extremely fast and cheap, and not a good time. Filming took place over 14 days in December of 1945. The schedule was so tight, Yarbrough and the producers allegedly closed the set to prevent the cast and crew from escaping to holiday parties on other lots. Lead actor Don Porter joked that they damned near starved to death while smuggling in sandwiches just to survive. Then, as a final Christmas gift, they dragged the cast back for reshoots on Christmas Eve. This isn't fucking Citizen Kane, it's She-Wolf of London, damn it. That thick atmospheric fog we see rolling through the film, that was bee smoke. The crew took literal bee smokers, the bellows beekeepers used to calm hives, and pumped frankincense over hot charcoal at ankle height. It looked great on camera, but it was a nightmare for the actors. It created a dense, acrid cloud that made it nearly impossible for the cast to see their marks or even deliver lines without choking. If you blink during the opening credits, you'll miss two of the biggest names in horror history, Jack Pierce and Vera West. Yes, the Jack Pierce, the guy who created the face of Frankenstein's monster and the mummy, and could do this and this, was in charge of makeup for this film, yet we didn't get a werewolf transformation. He was actually fired from Universal shortly after this film in early 1947 after 20 years as head of makeup, replacing his expensive, time-consuming artistry with the cheaper techniques of Bud Westmore. This was also the final horror film worked on by legendary costume designer Vera West. West was a pioneering Hollywood costume designer and the first woman to serve as a studio's chief designer, leading the Universal Pictures costume department from 1928 to 1947. She defined the Universal look. That iconic dress Elsa Lanchester wears in 1935's Bride of Frankenstein, that was the genius of West. She was also responsible for that famous, beautiful black satin gown Eva Gardner wears in the 1946 film The Killers. And if you do take a step back, a big step, from She-Wolf of London, you can say that the outfits are killer. But Aunt Martha wasn't the only one gaslighting people. Universal didn't just change their storytelling, they were shifting their tactics. Times were changing and so were the frights. They took the psychological blueprint laid down by competing studios and used it to gaslight an entire generation of horror fans. Let's talk about what led to this great werewolf bait and switch of 1946. The evolution of the Universal monsters and horror cinema is really fascinating when studied. We're now pivoting from the golden age physical monsters of old to something far more insidious, psychological horror. The classic Gothic threats, like the foreign Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman, were external, tangible threats. You knew what they were, and you knew how to defeat them. A stake through the heart, fire, or silver. The horror was real but straightforward. But by the time we reach films like She-Wolf of London, that changes dramatically. The horror isn't lurking in the shadows outside. It's within the characters themselves. The focus shifts to guilt, doubt, and paranoia. The protagonist, Phyllis Allenby, is led to believe she's a monster, but the real twist is that the she-wolf is just a delusion, a cover for a human killer. The lack of a real monster is a significant creative choice, driving the fear inward. This was a cost-effective choice for low-budget productions, but it also signaled a massive genre shift. So, why the profound change in horror cinema during the 1940s? The move was driven by three key factors that redefined the genre's landscape. First, there was undeniable monster fatigue. Universal had produced so many sequels and crossovers. The crossovers are normally referred to as monster rallies, but I prefer the term monster mashes, such as 1943's Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, 1944's House of Frankenstein, 1945's House of Dracula, and a little later the Abbott and Costello films. That their iconic characters became less frightening and more like familiar stock characters. Audiences were no longer as invested in these stories. Second was, what I've been suggesting during this whole video, stark cost effectiveness. Psychological horror was simply cheaper. Shadows and creative audio cues replaced expensive makeup, prosthetics, and elaborate set pieces. Third, and perhaps most importantly, were changing societal fears. Post-World War II audiences were living through immense social dislocation and the very real horrors of war. Mass casualties, concentration camps, veterans struggling to reintegrate into civilian life. They were less interested in vampires, werewolves, and Egyptian curses, and more attuned to internal anxieties, domestic threats, and the unreliability of the human mind. Fears that felt much more immediate. Psychology also became a popular exploration in the 1940s. Filmmakers began to use Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories in their films across the board, not just in the horror genre, such as his ideas on the uncanny, the divided self, and past trauma. This allowed for the exploration of complex and often taboo motivations that could not be explicitly addressed under the strict Hays Code censorship of the time. This new model wasn't Universal's idea. The true pioneer was RKO Pictures, and specifically producer Val Lewton and director Jacques Tourneur. Both of these men worked together on the films I Walked with a Zombie in 1943 and The Leopard Man the same year. Val Lewton was also responsible for the films The Seventh Victim, also in 1943, and 1945's The Body Snatcher with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. I got them on Criterion. I Walked with a Zombie is really good, but I love The Seventh Victim. The 1942 film Cat People is this duo's most famous and is regarded as the pioneer of the psychological horror subgenre. RKO's response to Universal's The Wolfman in 1941. Cat People is about a Serbian woman who fears that an ancient family curse will transform her into a deadly panther if she experiences sexual intimacy. Hays Code be damned on this one. There's so much to talk about with Cat People. I could do a whole separate video on that film. Its horror is based purely on suggestion, mood, and the protagonist Irina's internal paranoia. Lewton understood that the unseen is often more terrifying than anything a filmmaker can physically depict. That swimming pool scene in Cat People is perfect, by the way. I won't say anything more in case you haven't seen the film, but that scene inspires me. The famous Lewton bus jump scare, where tension builds only to be broken by a mundane but startling sound, proved that anticipation and imagination were powerful tools for fear. What you don't see truly is scarier than what you do. Kind of like how Steven Spielberg uses John Williams' score in 1975's Jaws to announce the presence of the shark since the mechanical shark they had kept malfunctioning and the budget was low. Kind of like that. Another 1940s cornerstone of psychological horror that I want to recommend is Paramount's 1944 film The Uninvited. It's a little different than Cat People as it has direct supernatural horror that in Cat People is left ambiguous, but it still relies on psychological elements. And yes, I do collect Criterion. I do want to iterate that Cat People was not the first psychological horror film, rather the one that changed the game. Oftentimes the title of the first true psychological horror film belongs to the 1920 German silent film The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, while the first American psychological horror is credited as Universal's own 1934 film The Black Cat. Universal's She-Wolf of London was a last-ditch effort to imitate RKO's groundbreaking success years later. They were out of ideas and signaling that their old physical monster ways were well and truly over. But Universal still felt like they were obligated to keep the monster's legacy alive, and they knew there were people who would still buy tickets to a Universal monster. So they did what was the cheapest, which was making the title of the film sound like a monster movie, and marketing it as a supernatural horror, slapping the word mystery onto the trailer in case anyone called them out on it. Universal also did want to create female counterparts to their monsters. That's how we got 1935's The Bride of Frankenstein, and 1936's Dracula's Daughter. And of course, 1940's The Invisible Woman that I have done a video on previously. So I'm sure that naming it She-Wolf was also Universal's way of falsely giving the Wolfman a female counterpart. And man, June Lockhart would have made a real good She-Wolf, I think. But horror didn't stop with the mind. The genre once again needed a new monster to reflect a changing world. After dealing with internal anxieties, the focus shifted again. Suddenly the biggest threats were external, societal, and environmental. The 1950s provided a fertile ground for a new kind of fear. The anxieties of the Cold War and the fear of nuclear annihilation in of the atomic age gave birth to a whole new breed of monsters. There weren't vampires or ghosts. They were creatures born of unchecked science, mutation, and the unknown depths of our own natural world. There were a lot of big bug movies during this period. A lot. Films like 1954's Them featured giant, irradiated ants exploring the fear of mutation from nuclear experiments. The same year's Godzilla also showcased a massive monster awakened by atomic testing. Other films, like 1956's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, tapped into deep Cold War paranoia, symbolizing the fear of communism, loss of individuality, and societal infiltration. Universal needed its own answer to this new atomic age of cinema, and it delivered what is considered its final great classic monster. In 1954's The Creature from the Black Lagoon. The Gill Man, or the Creature, is a uniquely sympathetic monster, a figure that resonates with several 1950s anxieties. On one level, the Gill Man represents nature's resistance to human encroachment and exploitation. The scientists invade his isolated, archaic domain, and his attacks are a form of retribution, a reminder that disturbing vast, unknown realms of nature can have dangerous, unforeseen consequences. The Gill Man also symbolizes anxieties about sexuality and otherness. His fixation on the sole female character, Kay, played by Julie Adams, taps into both our fascination with the unknown depths of nature and our darkest desires. Some interpretations even view the creature as a metaphor for the fear of women's independence, or an allegory for racial anxieties, representing a primitive other that challenges established social norms. Reminder that the Gill Man was designed by Millicent Patrick, an artist and one of Universal's first female animators and special effects designers. Give her the credit she deserves for this cute face. Ultimately, the genre evolved dramatically in this era. It moved from the fear of the self and our inner demons, the psychological, to a pervasive fear of uncontrolled science and the environment. Bela Lugosi's Dracula states that there are worse things awaiting man than death. Death for the living is oftentimes a forlorn experience of melancholy and grief. But death is also a beautiful transition into something newer, more self-aware. This experience of life translates to film and other mediums of storytelling as well. Horror will always morph into society's most relevant fears. After all, what's more frightening than a reflection of yourself? So, She-Wolf of London served as a tombstone to this Gothic era, but what goes around often comes around again. The thing about death is that sometimes there can be resurrection. The traditional Gothic atmosphere and classic monsters would rise again. In the late 1950s and 60s, kickstarted by British studio Hammer Films, with the releases of The Curse of Frankenstein in 1957 and The Horror of Dracula in 1958. This time around creeping in vivid color, increased gore, and sex. Universal would get in on this action by teaming with Hammer to co-produce The Mummy in 1959. Through this renaissance, we were introduced to the terrifying performances of Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Barbara Steele, and further solidified Vincent Price as a horror icon. And with the increasing popularity of television, the original Universal monsters found new audiences with younger generations who became enthralled with them. Let's cycle back to that original question the title of this video presents. Did She-Wolf of London kill the Universal monsters? The answer is obviously a hell no. Just like the monsters themselves in the films, they may be temporarily subdued, but they will always make their grand return. Their influence can be felt in pop culture and decades of filmmaking like Spilt Blood. They're too beloved to stay dead. I wouldn't be sitting here making this video if I didn't care about them. Most of the monsters have been remade countless times and are still being remade at the time of this recording. Some certainly more successful than others. 2020's The Invisible Man was really good though. A great film to start a discussion about domestic violence. They even now have their own land called Dark Universe at the park Epic Universe in Orlando, Florida. I will make it there someday. They are not going anywhere. But I think a deeper question lurks underneath all this grave dirt. What do you think this modern revival has to say about society today? Thank you all so much for joining me on this She-Wolf journey and through decades of horror cinema. Please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe so you'll never miss my next dive into the macabre. Now, I would truly love to hear from you. We discussed the Gothic, psychological, and atomic eras of horror. So my question is this: which one do you think produced the most endearing monsters? Drop your comments and monster pics into the comments below. I'm always planning ahead, so if you have a great idea for a film, TV show, or book that you think is perfect for a full-length video, doesn't even have to be horror, I love other genres as well, especially LGBT. Feel free to add that too. And before you go, all the links to my other socials are down in the description if you'd like to follow me there. I appreciate every single one of you. Again, I'm Adriana Oyster, and until next time...
I decided to drive you insane.
The body of the child was horribly mangled. By the way, did you ever notice what nice, broad shoulders I have?
We seem to have interrupted a romantic moment.
And if you get caught, I'll swear I never set eyes on you.
And I'll confirm it.